Stove presented by the General Insurance. Welcome inside studio. Okay, good morning to you, Lauren Shahadi, Harold Reynolds, Keith Costas, JP Morosi is with us as well. Good morning. You are none too pleased with me this morning because I'm asking questions and not listening to the answer. Yes or yes?
Totally. She asked me a question. Hey, Harold, blah, 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 blah. And then she starts talking to everybody else.
I have a lot going on.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
Because I could go home if I wanted this kind of treatment.
My goodness.
Maddie is in Disney World for the week.
Did you speak with him yesterday?
Yeah, he rambled something about how he paid $25 for a grilled cheese. So he's in a fabulous place. You have to save money. You have to pack your breakfast and lunch. That's my key to Disney World. Oatmeal packets.
You're that person when you're going through, you're pulling this stuff
out of my purse, banana, peanut butter, crackers. It's expensive.
I'm looking at my mom then. My mother used to do that constantly.
Anything to save
We go to the movie. Here she goes, pulling out of the purse. Here's your popcorn.
Yes.
Right?
Here's your Swedish fish because they're $1 at the dollar
Todd's
store.
laughing, he knows.
Dad, you know.
Yeah.
And they're $10 at the movie theater. It's $9.
Yes.
I'm saving that.
Oh, yeah.
In my
no doubt.
pocketbook.
You know, growing up in Corvallis, they had Williams Bread, was a big bread company in Oregon. And if you collected their bread wrappers, you got to go to the movies for free when I was a kid. So we were like fighting over those bread wrappers, man.
So fun.
It was cool. Jungle Book's coming up.
Yeah,
we got to get the bread
We're
wrappers.
going to go for free.
It was cool.
We are 1 week away from the Hall of Fame announcement. What do you expect?
I don't know. It could be. I think Scott Rollins gets in. He's the only guy that I really think is going to definitely be in. I think there might be a sprinkling of maybe one or maybe two. Other than that, that's it.
I think for Scott Rowland and Keith Costas, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 62.3% last time, so trending in the right direction. We're going to talk about the candidacy for Carlos Beltran, and we talked about Jimmy Rollins yesterday, and JP Morosi is with us as well. We're going to get to him in just a bit. He's going to reveal his Hall of Fame ballot for the first time right here.
Wow, we're right around the corner. That's next Tuesday.
It is next Tuesday. It is January 24th. Our coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and the live announcement is at 6, and the coverage will conclude at 7 p.m. This is such a, you spoke with Fred and Griff. And you talked about how much this means, even for the greats of our sport. What did he have to say about it?
Well, just to be in that house, to be in the Hall of Fame. And one of the questions, you'll get a chance to see the interview. You know, they bring out all the Hall of Famers in the beginning, and they're announcing who they are. And I'm always counting which guys I played against. And I'm up to like 70 Hall of Famers that I played against and actually saw them. And so for Fred to be going in, because we're, played in the same era, and I was like, well, who are you looking forward to seeing? His whole thing, this is really cool. He talked about all the conversations he had at first base all the time. And it was fascinating to hear that. You got to watch the interview.
Who was his favorite?
Conversationally, he loved talking to Kirby Puckett, but obviously Kirby's not alive anymore. But everybody, they would stop at first base and he would ask them things. George Brett, hey, what were you thinking about on this breaking ball? You name it. He was picking guys' brains when they came to first base.
It's those kind of moments that I'm sure he will not soon forget. JP Morosi has a Hall of Fame ballot. He is leading the league in information. JP, good morning to you. I know that pressure is a privilege, and this is a job that you take very, very seriously. Good morning. Tell me who is on your Hall of Fame ballot.
Lauren and Harold, good morning. Yes, as you mentioned, 1 week from today, the Hall of Fame class revealed, and I am a 10-person on the ballot year voter. Every year I've got the same thing.
I love
this is
that,
what I believe that, Harold, for me, I like to have the big haul, and for me to have at least those 10 names to sustain in some cases, and I'll explain later my rationale. But here are my 10 names on my Hall of Fame ballot revealed on Hot Stove for the first time this year. I love this animation. All the names, and then we compress it down to the 10. Beltran, the first time, of course, for him. Burley, Helton, Torrey Hunter, Andruw Jones, Jeff Kent, Scott Rowland, Jimmy Rollins, Gary Sheffield, and Billy Wagner. Now, in a couple of these cases, Wagner and Helton, my ballot was a little crowded in recent years, and so I didn't have a chance to vote for them every single year. But I've always said that as they get closer, to that 10 years on the ballot for them and closer to the 75% required to be elected, that I would make sure that I made room for them on my ballot. So for Ryan Thibodeau and our colleagues who track these ballots very carefully, I would expect that the Wagner and Helton votes are perhaps most important for them. And yes, Harold and Lauren, I welcome your comments, thoughts, critiques here as the hour goes on.
We love his ballot. Who stands out, Ace?
So I got a couple questions. One, I'll get to my big one second. Mark Burley. I thought that was interesting. Not many people are thinking of Mark Burley as a Hall of Famer. You think about how fast he worked, but why is he on your ballot?
Consistency, Harold. For me, the way that we view the Hall of Fame and the standard that we are holding players to and the 75%, it is hard to get there. It's hard to get to 75. It's also, in some cases, challenging to get to the 5 required to stay on the ballot year after year. And there is the honor in getting the 75 to get in. There's also the honor in getting the 5 to stay on the ballot. And that's where I think about players like Mark Burley and Torrey Hunter as well. I want them to stay on the ballot. I believe that for the era in which they played, both Burley and Torrey were exemplary players. Do they eventually get to the 75 and get honored by that number of players, or that number of voters, rather? For me, I would say that based on current trends, it's unlikely. But I, as someone who covered them in the American League Central for a lot of their careers, believe they're worthy of the continued consideration. And so for me, Burley, I look at this, Harold, and say, is he on the level of CC and Verlander and players that had the same sort of era as he did? Perhaps not. But I am someone that really believes the consistency is important. Okay. And the durability is important. And so for me, I go with Burley on the consistency and durability mark to have that vote.
All right, I'm leaving my big one next because Lauren's got one before I go.
Well, I mean, I just wonder about Carlos Beltran. Was it a no-brainer for you? I mean, we look back at his career and there were, periods of pure dominance. What was your thinking behind it?
Lauren, it's the uniqueness of a switch-hitting center fielder who hit for power in his day. I do believe that his vote total is lower than I would have expected. I think based on the merits of his playing career, I think late career Beltran, when he was with the Cardinals and the Yankees, for me, watching him play in those years, I said, he is putting the finishing touches on a Hall of Fame resume. Now, there are some who have issue with the sign-stealing scandal with the Astros at the end of his career and perhaps are withholding their vote for him either for a year or longer. And I think that's why his vote tracking is lower than expected with Ryan Thibodeau's vote tracker. But when you consider and you compare him to the likes of, let's say, an Andre Dawson, who I thought was, for me, a very worthy candidate in the course of his career, and you see it there, basically the same resume. Check that out. Within 2 stolen bases, 3 home runs, OPS plus identical, all-star selections basically identical. And I think Beltran played center field for longer than the Hawk did. And for me, the Hawk was a clear Hall of Fame choice and eventually got in based on what he had done with the Cubs and the Expos. I think with Beltran, he was a key member of postseason teams with the Cardinals, with the Yankees. Of course, we know well what he did with the Astros earlier in his career, and of course with the Mets as well, helping him get to a National League Championship Series. So for me, Beltran's career significant. The run production, the stolen bases, playing center field as a switch hitter. I just think that Beltran's numbers are going to fall shy of 75% right now, in part because of the legacy of what happened with the Astros back in 2017.
I totally agree. I think without the scandal, he sails into the Hall of Fame for all the reasons you pointed out. So I want to ask you this one. This is a tough one for you, JP. You've always voted for Manny. You always voted for Barry. You always voted for Clemens. Why no A-Rod on your ballot?
So I'll actually draw a bit of a distinction. I have not voted for Ramirez, but I did always vote for Bonds and Clemens.
Okay.
And you're right. I did not vote for Alex. So I am no on Alex, no on Manny. I will be no on Cano when he comes up on the ballot. I'll be no on Nelson Cruz for the same reason. My standard has been that if you were suspended under the MLB and MLBPA, joint drug treatment prevention, all of those aspects of the steroid testing era, I don't vote for you. So basically, it's that sharp for me. If you were suspended, I don't vote for you. In the case of Bonds and Clemens, they were not suspended. Bonds and Clemens played during an era in which there was not enough information acknowledged and aware about what was going on during that period of time in baseball. And yes, I understand the Mitchell report and everything else.
That's fair.
But I have always voted for Bonds and Clemens. But I draw the line and say, if after 2005, from 2005 to now, where we started seeing suspensions, then if you were suspended once MLB and the MLBPA said, we're not going to be doing this, we're going to test now and we're cleaning up the sport. If you were suspended after that date happened, I don't vote for you. So it is, I would say this, Harold, a difficult question for the game, made, in my mind, simple by the existence of suspensions. And it is a, I would describe it as a difficult, easy decision.
No,
once
that's
the
fair.
suspensions came into play and we've got that information, if you were suspended, you are a no for me.
JP, we got into a serious conversation yesterday about Jimmy Rollins' candidacy, and Keith gave us all these numbers and all these boards, and he said himself, looking at the numbers and going back over the data, he said, it kind of changed my mind. Make a case for J-Roll.
I think, Lauren, for me, he's one of the great shortstops of the last 25 years. And I do think that when you talk about center field with Beltran, as we just documented, and shortstop, these are special positions on the diamond. All things being equal, if I had one vote to give, I vote for the shortstop over the corner outfielder because it's a more demanding position. So I look at Rollins, the stolen base success rate that he had, the power that he had. Again, a switch hitter on, importantly, because this matters to me, a consistent postseason team, a World Series championship team. This is where I'll say a bit about the narrative of how writers view things. If you don't want people to consider historical narrative and significance of championship teams, then do not ask people who think in the realm of anecdotes and narratives to vote. That's what we do. We are writers. That's how we think. And when you look at Jimmy Rollins' career, and you think about the way the Phillies built back into being a consistent winning team from 2006 and 7 onward, and the importance of Jimmy Rollins, that was back when Ed Wade was the GM and Jimmy and Chase Utley ascend to the spot, and the consistency that he played. 17 seasons in the show. 6th most games ever played at shortstop. That uniqueness of the 200 homers and 400 stolen bases. Look at those numbers. One of 11 players in the history of the game to do that. Now, I'll be really curious, and I'll sort of put a pin in this as we talk about what Utley's candidacy will be like when he shows up on the ballot. He didn't play as many games as Jimmy because of the injuries. For me, J-Roll went to the post every day. And I think that when you consider what that Phillies team represented and how he was, you look at Ryan Howard and Utley, when I think about that Phillies team, it's the photo of Jimmy Rollins that comes up first. Because he's the shortstop, he's the leader, he's the tone setter, he played the games. I look at him as being a historically significant player. And if you take a look at the number of games he played and compare him to other switch-hitting shortstops, I would love to see as we go forward and you think about how does he compare with Larkin and Trammell. I think for me, Rollins is a historically significant player on a transformative team in one of the special markets of our game. Philadelphia, the history of that city and that ball club, for me, he belongs on the ballot consistently, and I believe that the more that people look at his candidacy, he is going to be a Hall of Famer.
And you asked Jimmy what mattered to him the most, and he said that he posted every day. You talked about how many games he played, 162 back in 2007. JP Morosi, we appreciate the time. He said, when he said he used all his spots, you said you were shaking your head.